All right, it's time for me to introduce our remote speaker. I first met David Kantor almost 50 years ago when we discovered each other behind the door of a talk we had both walked out of. David has been a reader of the Urantia book for 65 years. During that time, he was active in fellowship administration and the hosting of study groups for more than 20 years, having been involved in the fostering of some of the early international groups of readers in South America and Eastern Europe. He currently is director of Urantia Book Films, a service of Rocky Mountain Spiritual Fellowship. His first film, Reimagining Jesus, is currently being viewed over 100 times every 24 hours on Amazon Prime Video. Currently in production, Who Say You That I Am is optimistically scheduled for relative completion by the end of 2020. Today, David's going to be talking about bridging the gap. And it'll be a video that Derek Samaras interviewed him about fundamental elements of the Urantia book, spirituality, as well as David's current film designed to bridge the conceptual gap between the Urantia book and the religious repercussions of the fourth epical revelation, which of course was the life and teachings of Jesus. This interview touches on some of the Urantia book's personalist cosmology, as well as some of the philosophical reasoning behind the structure of the upcoming film. I wanted to say that David has put his finger on a central concept of reality, personality. As he puts it, a personalist cosmology. It is, for instance, the way to unify cosmology so that in God, all things consist and have their being. It is how the nucleus of each ultimate particle can be paradise, by noticing that all time-space is an experience in the mind of Majeston, a personality of paradise. It is where the matter and the spirit come together in the reality of persons. So with that, I give you David Kantor.
Thank you, Phil. And thank you, friends, everyone who's gathered there. Phil kind of filled you in on what's coming up. I'll make just a couple comments and then we'll go ahead and watch the video. Wanted to clarify this idea of personalist cosmology. Sounds heavier, far heavier than it is. The personalist cosmology simply is that everything that happens is a result of the interactions between personalities. From the Urantia book's perspective, the foundations of the universe are not energy and power and matter. They're relationships between personalities, all the way from the Paradise Trinity down to our own families. Everything that happens is a result of personality interactions, everything that comes into existence. And we look at the teachings of Jesus and they focus on personality. And at the time that he was teaching, that was quite a radical thing. The Greeks had focused on the mind. For the Greeks, the cultivation of the mind was the way to approach God. Jesus said that personality and relationships between persons is where we find God. So there's a whole lot of developmental work to go on there. And in the video, you're going to see Derek and I will discuss that a little bit. We'll discuss a little bit about the film and its objectives. It is a film designed to bridge the gap, to try to make the fifth epical revelation relevant to people who are familiar with the fourth. Bridge that conceptual gap and try to open up more people to examining the Urantia book. The video has been edited. Derek did a fairly long interview. We edited it down, got some basic ideas. Let's watch the video, make notes if you have any questions. By the way, if you want to make any comments or have any questions, you can text them during the video to Mark. Here's the number, 714-322-2372. Is that number up on a screen somewhere there? Let me give it to you again. Area code 714-322-2372. If you have any comments or questions, text them to Mark. When we're through watching the video, which is about 40 minutes long, we'll look at the questions. So enjoy the video. Donnie, if you're ready to go ahead and let her rip.
See this thing unfolding, how you see this revelation taking hold more so than it has already?
Well, that's a good question, and we all can speculate on that, and it turns out to be just speculation. For me, the most important thing is just trying to figure out the next step I can take, and that's all I can do. The world, it's crazy out there. It's just crazy. And it's hard to know is that a passing thing? Is it a sign of a progressive deterioration of the culture? And it's easy for me to get sidetracked into those speculations, but I think staying focused on our task of trying to get the revelation out there, trying to illuminate the gospel, trying to renew a sense of the presence of Jesus in the minds of people. That's the most important thing we can do, and need to be focused on that.
I know that you do have one production that's coming up that you're working on right now, a feature-length film. Do you think maybe you could explain to us in the audience a little bit about what your project is and what you're hoping to accomplish with its production?
Well, the tentative title of the film is "Who Say You That I Am?" It was Jesus' question to the apostles, to Peter, and I think that every single person today has to answer that question. Jesus is asking that question, who say you that I am? The purpose of the film is to try to create a bridge between the fourth epical revelation and the fifth epical revelation. I want to be able to interest Christians in exploring the Urantia book, and I want people who read the Urantia book to appreciate the heritage that comes out of Christianity upon which the text of the book is constructed. So I'm working with those basic elements. Beginning of the film, my basic premise is that the crucifixion was an absolute disaster. The greatest tragedy one could even imagine. If we look back in the history, we can imagine what's happening here with Greek culture, with the Romans, with the Hebrews. There were all of these trends, developing trends that I like to imagine were being cultivated by our spiritual benefactors, preparing for Jesus' arrival. This is a creator son, the Son of God, incarnating on the planet. So here are all these evolutionary trends being prepared for this divine being to come in and integrate those and infuse them with spiritual purpose. And the crucifixion came. It was like a collision of three freight trains, and the debris went everywhere. These trends they just continued on, and they're still out there today. And the Urantia book kind of picks up all of this debris that's still flying around and reassembles it, and says, okay, here's how all of this stuff really should fit together. It's taken 2,000 years to run out these repercussions and kind of get a reconstruction so we can reevaluate and start anew with living in this new dispensation.
Then would you say that maybe with your productions and with your movies that you try to do that yourself?
Yeah, the fragments are out there. And there are pieces in philosophy, there are pieces in theology, there are pieces in history, and then you've got this church like a tank lumbering down through the centuries, and the church is still out there, and it hasn't changed a whole lot. I mean, there's just so many interesting things to try to pull together here, and my biggest challenge is to get it simplified. There's just so much, and I'm just sorry that more readers of the Urantia book aren't just wallowing in all of this material that the Revelation just provides an open door for. I think a lot of people think, we got this revelation, that's all we need. But almost every page of that revelation is a doorway opening into some really interesting things out there in the world. Waiting to be explored and discovered.
I agree.
Jesus said, I have come that you might have life and have it more abundantly. And the Urantia book does that for us. It makes our life just abundant and rich and full with all of the doors it opens. Life is so interesting, and there are so many things to explore. It's kind of like you're riding along in a train and you see something out the window, and it goes by before you can really grasp it. And I have found that I've got to focus on just a couple of things. Get a few things done before I leave the planet. Get those things done. The real salvation for me from the Urantia book is that quote that says, don't panic. Don't think that all of these things surging in your mind have been put there to torment you, but only to suggest that life is an eternal adventure. You're going to have a chance to explore these things. So I have to accept that these things, there'll be a time to explore them. But right now, we're living on this planet at a critical time, a critical juncture in its history, and we've got an epical revelation that needs to get out there. So I just choose to focus on getting that out there. The thing with the traveling that has really been significant is just its enhancement of my appreciation for the human situation. Being able to be in a variety of environments, from bombed out villages in Lebanon or villages in South America or thriving cities like Istanbul or Moscow. You get a perspective on the human situation that I have found very, very helpful.
Thank God that the Revelation, the Urantia book, gives us these visions of Jesus as just this human, just living a cool life.
Well, yeah, and the Urantia book is very valuable there. In the Gospels, we get a little glimpse of the human Jesus in a few of those stories. But Paul didn't know the human Jesus. Paul had an encounter with the risen Christ, and his teaching is all based on that kind of a perception of the glorified Christ. He didn't have that personal relationship that the apostles had. And I appreciate the way the Urantia book brings that human Jesus back to us.
Well, let's talk about this. The fact that neither Paul nor the apostles really had confidence in including women in an equal basis.
Paul did work with women. If you read the book of Acts, women are mentioned in some of the epistles, and he apparently worked quite closely with them. I think Paul's gotten a bad rap. The Urantia book said he wasn't all that great with women, but interestingly enough, the pastoral epistles of Paul's, which is where almost all of the bad-mouthing of women is done, are now considered by scholars not to have been written by Paul, but rather by one of his followers a generation or so later.
Really?
Yes. Be that as it may, one of the things I'm doing with the film is I've done a lot of work to dig out some of the women who have been involved in this process. There's some great feminist scholars out there working in the history, digging out old manuscripts where women were really playing a major role in what was going on. There's a lot about Mary Magdalene that's out there in some of these other documents as being a significant leader of women in the Jerusalem area. There's some great stories about Philip's daughters who were involved in evangelism, went up to Ephesus and were involved in a movement that was parallel to Paul's. So, these are being brought out. I'm trying to find those so that I can get a good balance between men and women being involved in the early propagation of the gospel. And the other one is the racial stuff. You look at the classic art about this period, and they all look like white folks, European white folks, and they weren't. They were Middle Eastern, they were African. Athanasius, who's highly regarded in the Urantia book for what he did in the early church councils, he was called the Black Dwarf. He was an African. And, we've lost a sense of the racial and the racial diversity, the diversity between men and women who were involved here in these early years. So I'm trying to capture some of that in the film, too.
You're kind of going through a lot of artwork then in order to find certain symbology or representation of these people?
Well, the part of what's interesting is that if you read the old manuscripts, you'll read about the Black Dwarf, and then you go online and try to find a picture of him, and he looks like a white Greek. So, I've hired a portrait artist, a very good portrait artist, who's doing portraits of these key people, animated portraits that I'll be using in the film, because I'm going to be doing a lot of biographical sketches of people who've been key players in bringing the gospel out into the world.
Now, how do you feel about that? Because some people feel that it's a little bit of taboo as far as once we give somebody visual representation of who someone might have been, and then there's all sorts of stuff that ensues from that, kind of like the argument of Jesus's image,
Yeah.
And so how do you feel about that, bringing those things to life?
Well, for Jesus, I'm just going to run a rapid sequence of 50 or 60 images. Boom, 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 boom. I can't do a Jesus. But my other images, I look at them as being symbolic rather than representational. Okay. I mean, you see a black man as Athanasius, and it's not representational, it's symbolic. I want to jolt people a little bit. Say, what? An African? He was an African? Yeah, he was. And you look at some of these other movements, and you think, what? They were led by a woman? Yeah, they were.
Yeah.
So it's more to be symbolic and kind of jolt their consciousness a little bit, rather than to say, well, this is what James, the brother of Jesus, looked like.
Right.
In fact, that's a good one. I'm having fun working with that one, because I can't do a picture of Jesus, but I can do James, and people can think, oh, I wonder if Jesus looked a little bit like that.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. You've been around for a while. How long have you been reading the Urantia book?
Well, I got the Urantia book in '66, and then made my first trip to Chicago in '72 to meet folks there.
So you've been reading it for,
50, 55 years, yeah.
So in that time, what would you say, from your nice perspective, has been maybe the most meaningful things that have happened along the way throughout the timeline of the Urantia Revelation movement?
Well, probably the most meaningful thing that's happened have been the relationships that have formed between people who are reading the book. You can look at the fellowship today, for example, and there's some wonderful people there and wonderful relationships. I mean, to me, the people I've met in life as a result of reading the Urantia book have been a huge bonus. I mean, it has enriched my life so much, just in terms of the people I've been privileged to meet. Now, if we're talking about getting the revelation out into the world, I see three things that have really been critical. Number one was getting the copyright into the public domain just as the internet came along, which enabled readers to just explode into all different kinds of ministry online and really get the book out there. That was key. The other one has been Urantia Foundation's rapid production of translations. It's made it so that essentially there is a global movement emerging from the grassroots around the world, rather than emanating from some central point with some central authority and doctrine. And I think that is really important and really valuable, that is happening out there. And the third thing, I think is what you're doing right here, is getting a production facility in place so that media can be produced and gotten out there over the internet or even out into streaming services, getting that out there, creating an environment where people can do production work. I've longed for that for so long in the Urantia movement, and those of us who do that have always had to just kind of do it on our own.
Right.
But now we're getting a space. You're really picking up the ball and running with it and putting this together. I'm really grateful for what you're doing and just really happy to see it happening. The film work I'm doing right now is a team effort. There are people like you and other Urantia book readers out there who are involved in film and television, who are excited about what I'm doing and are there as consultants and helping. Proofreaders. I mean, we're really blessed. We've got at this point now a number of scholars in academia who are Urantia book readers that have got as resources. And we've got people who are backing projects financially. So a lot of it is coming together there, and it is a team effort. A lot of people working together to make it happen. But I wanted to back up just a little bit here. To me, future historians are going to look back on this early period, and what they're going to see right now, historians of religion, of new religious movement, of religion, point to the late 1960s and the 1970s as the greatest period of religious revival in the 20th century, with the Jesus movement and all of the activities of that period of time. And that's a period of time when Urantia book readers are being sued for trying to get the Urantia book out into this milieu, out into the conversation that was taking place. And I think that down the road, that's going to be viewed as a really stupid thing, as just stupid.
Yeah.
And, it's what's done is done, but there was a huge opportunity there that I believe based mostly on fear, because people running the institutions had no clue as to what to do based on fear. It was just, keep it closed. Don't let it get out because we won't know what to do. The spirit of worship kicks in before the spirit of wisdom does. And we get at times of religious excitement or enthusiasm, people just go off the rails. They're talking to they're channeling the Holy Spirit, or they're channeling Michael or whatever. People just go off the rails. There's this need somehow to have a philosophical and scientific perspective on spirituality so that it can be, I don't want to say contained, but it has to be shaped so that it can be viable inside the context of a culture. And I think the key might be in Jesus' teachings, because he told us to get to work, go out and spread the gospel, go out and talk to people about the kingdom, go out and serve people, and when we go out and try to serve, now we're engaged with people, and it's a lot less likelihood that we're going to just spin off into space with our own speculations about our cosmic destiny,
they haven't actualized the teachings of the Urantia book, but they know that there's something valuable in there enough to where it's almost changed their life, where they've taken on this evangelism. They've taken on evangelism for the Urantia book. They've wrapped up their identity and their self-acceptance in the group with whether this person is going to accept the Urantia book.
Right.
You know,
Right.
do you have any thoughts on that and how maybe a healthier way of going about doing that?
Well, it's a problem. You've identified what I think is an important problem just in the spiritual life in general. If you use your spiritual life to create a social identity for yourself, now you're trapped in that social identity and you can't grow beyond it. I mean, in the early years, there were a number of people who were constructing social identities for themselves in the Urantia movement out of supposedly secret information they had and old documents and things. So, you know, the group I was working with, our reaction was to go collect all of those up and put them online so everybody can see for themselves what's really out there, you know, and I think that kind of got nipped in the bud there. Yeah. We want credibility and we want authority. That to me is one of the biggest problems in religion today, is the need for some authority. People want authority. It's understandable.
Yeah.
I can appreciate it. And we've got the Urantia book, and we all think, well, that's our authority. You know, now we've got the Word, so we're just replacing one authority with another. Where's that at?
The spirituality practice is not at the same level as the academic practice, I would say, in the Urantia movement.
Oh, yeah.
Right? You know, and so people do ask for it, but who of us is willing to give themselves the title of priest? You know what I mean? Like, under whose authority?
Well, you know, maybe it's the case that looking for authority in the spiritual life is an illusion. You know, what is it that we want authority there? If the spiritual life is really based on our personal relationships with each other and the values that we use in those relationships, that's our spiritual life. I think if we're looking for authority on something, we should be looking to science. Science is the closest I can think of to being an authority. This is the way things work. This is how they're structured, you know. Looking for authority in the spiritual world takes spirituality and makes it into philosophy at best, but it certainly can't be scientific.
We're looking for authority to tell us what to do, and we're also looking for a group culture, practice that is acceptable.
Yeah, the communal aspect there is something that is just kind of beyond me. In my own thinking, I'm pretty postmodern in my thinking, in that I'm pretty strongly believing that we fabricate reality for ourselves. Each one of us has fabricated a worldview based on what we've read, what our experiences are, what our emotional needs are. You know, there's no authority there. Revelation is really helpful in helping us to organize our thinking, but I'm feeling like we're each an island, and our only connection with each other is spiritual, in the values that we use in our interpersonal relationships.
It reminds me of a project that you did a couple years ago. Talked about Jesus's practice of the Remembrance Supper, and kind of how that fellowship in there is kind of part of developing the Supreme in itself too. Can you talk about a little bit of that? Because in that is a bit of a spiritual practice that I think you've touched upon, that we can all kind of do in our own lives as well.
Yeah, there's an emerging field of thought out there called personalism, where that's a focus on personality, and I would say that the Urantia book is absolutely a personalist document, in that everything that happens is a result of relationships between persons. And I think it's very instructive in terms of what you're asking here about this Remembrance Supper. Jesus says, wherever 2 or 3 of you are gathered together, there am I in the midst of you. And I'd be willing to speculate that our interpersonal relationships, our exchange, like we're having right now, it is kind of a meronchial structure, and that structure forms a context in which the personal presence of Jesus can be there. So when we get together with the Remembrance Supper, or when we get together any time in His name, He's right there in that spiritual context, that meronchia matrix that is constituting our active, creative personality interactions with each other.
Maybe like the evolution of engaging the personality of Jesus.
I think for myself, it was largely an unconscious process over time. The way I would articulate it is that look at philosophy, look at theology, look at the world's religions. It's really clear that as human beings, we experience some kind of spiritual presence, some kind of sensitivity that there's something beyond us. And to me, that is the presence that was incarnated as Jesus. That presence. And a part of the revelation of the incarnation is that, yes, that presence of God, that divine presence, has a personality, and you can relate to it. You can talk to it. It loves you. It cares about you. It wants to help guide you through your life. And there's becoming comfortable with that. And I think that the biggest challenge that I've had, and maybe that each of us has, is trying to figure out what is real and what are illusions that I'm generating out of my own psychological needs. That's a murky area, but it's also an area where faith and trust come in, and when we combine that with revelation, whether it's reading the Bible or reading the Urantia book or whatever, now we can kind of put that together, and the reach of faith gets a little stronger. We can say, okay, I'm going to work with this. I'm going to go with this. And once we do that, at least in my experience, it wasn't long before I started getting confirmation. Yep, this works. This is how we do it. This is how we move forward. So once you get past that point of being worried about, are you really pursuing reality, or are you just chasing psychological needs? It opens up, the field opens up, and now you can see the horizon, and you've got a direction to move in.
I'm always intrigued on everybody's development of faith, and how
it's probably unique and different for each individual, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And just to see, their practice in faith and how it's grown for them and how real and visceral it is. And
you mentioned the Catholic Church. I grew up in a really strictly fundamentalist home, and the Catholic Church,
yeah,
you don't even go there.
Yeah.
But I've been working on this film, and a lot of the visuals for the film I'm shooting in Denver area churches. And so I've gotten to know priests and ministers and leaders in a lot of Denver area churches. And it's been a transformative experience. I'm almost ready to convert to Catholicism. These are wonderful communities of people. Their kids all go to the same school at the church. They see each other at church. I meet priests and people in these churches who are fully dedicated to trying to actualize the kingdom of God on earth. Go to Mass. Everybody comes to Mass, and they do the Mass, it's all done. And then you get this nice homily. It's like everybody comes in, does the ritual, got to get it out of the way. And then there's this wonderful homily, and then they've got donuts and coffee, and the kids are playing, and it's wonderful. And I go into a Catholic church or an Episcopalian church, and these big ones in Denver, I walk in and I immediately want to worship. There's the beauty of the light coming through the glass, and the icons, and the story is told in the windows, and it just moves me to worship. I go into one of these contemporary Protestant churches, this out in Lafayette,
Oh, the big one?
The big one out there.
The Flatirons Church.
Yeah. And it's wonderful. I love that place. I love going to their
It's like a
services.
concert.
You got 3,000 people, man, and the music is rocking the place. But you go into these churches and there's nothing. There's blank walls, only big video screens.
Right.
And then they're throwing the stuff on the video screens. But what really interests me about that is from a sense of Jungian psychology. You walk into the Catholic Church and now you're in touch with all the archetypes of the collective unconscious for
Right.
Christian civilization. You're right there with all the archetypes. Christianity threw them all away, and their imagery is just right now. Well, we're having this children's thing on Wednesday and the women's group on Thursday, and it's all very right now, and you're no longer in touch with the archetypes. And one of the things I notice in the Urantia book from a Jungian perspective is that the Urantia book revitalizes all of those Jungian archetypes in Christian civilization, Adam and Eve and Melchizedek and Abraham. It not only revitalizes them, but it gives us a whole range of new archetypes.
Yeah.
Brilliant evening stars and thought adjusters and creator sons. It's like this revelation that is revitalizing and renewing the entire collective unconscious of Christian civilization. I've got all these kind of abstract ideas in the development of the dogma and the Christian theology, and people are going to glaze over after 3 minutes of listening to this stuff. Plus, a lot of people don't have the vocabulary to put those things together. So what I'm doing is trying to communicate those concepts by showing them in the lives of the people that I'm doing the biographies of. It's almost like a Urantia book version of Lives of the Saints. But by showing these key people and showing what were their ideals, what were their struggles, and how did they come through there, I'm hoping to help people who view the film reach the point of, hey, I experienced that too. I can do something. I can be involved. Yeah, I had a rough time coming up in life, and look what this person did. So, those are my heroes in the film. Are these men and women? Some you've heard of, some you've never heard of, but they're heroes. I think each person has the ability to discover that presence within themselves. I've always thought that it's kind of like I go out to the airport here to pick up somebody who's coming to visit me, and get off the plane, pick them up, we go out to the parking lot to get to the car, and they say, well, where are the Rocky Mountains? And I can say, oh, we're right over here. And that person can look over there and see them for themselves. And I think we need to get to where we can do that with the kingdom of heaven, with the kingdom, with that inner spiritual kingdom. We should get to where we can just say, well, here it is, and they can see it for themselves. I haven't gotten there, but it's an ideal. How can we do that? How can we help people see that? Being good to them and kind and helpful, trying to serve their needs probably is a good way to start. But people should be able to see that for themselves. They've got that thought adjuster and that seraphim, pushing, they got the osmotic pressure going on that membrane there.
Yeah, I like the divine conspiracy working.
Yeah. So how do we reinforce that? How do we help them actually have a spiritual engagement rather than trying to sell them a book or communicate a doctrine or transfer a teaching? How do we help them actually engage with spirit?
Just as we can point to earmarks of rebellious nature, we can point to earmarks of the kingdom of heaven or the family of God, if you will, that can be a little bit more tangible. And I'm still racking my brain trying to think of what those might look like, but I know what they can feel like.
What about the qualitative state of a relationship with another person? To me, that, I get back to this personalist thing and this network of relationships between persons. And in my own view, that is where the kingdom emerges, is in that network of relationships. That has survival value. So you see those earmarks of kindness, of tolerance, those fruits of the Spirit. It's interesting, those fruits of the Spirit only appear in the context of interpersonal relationships. That's where they live. That's where you see them. That, to me, is an indicator of where spiritual reality is, where the locus of spirituality is. It's not back here in my brain meditating and chanting a mantra somewhere. It's out here serving and engaged. It's interesting, the Urantia book gives us 2 spiritual practices, just 2, worship and service. And if you look at those, worship engages our personality with the personality of God, and service engages our personality with the personalities of people around us. It's a personalist religion. You know, get your personality engaged and start using these spiritual values to shape how you're interacting with that interpersonal environment. You know, one of the things we haven't really covered a whole lot of here is the idea of community. And I know for some people that's a big deal, having the community. Yeah. I'm not quite sure how to relate to that. My personal feeling is that I want to be working to get the revelation into other communities, into Christian communities. I have concerns about building our own community. You know, there's something like 31,000 sects and denominations out there, each one with a different little take on Jesus, and I don't think the world needs another one. You know, I think with the fellowship, we've got a great community there. It's a wonderful community, but it's oriented towards bringing other people into our special little thing here rather than mobilizing people to go out and take a message into other contexts. And that's one of my concerns about community, is that it becomes an end in itself. I feel like I have a great community that I'm working with on the film. There's probably 20 people out there. It's a network of people, a little community of people who are really interested in the project. And we're in constant communication, and there's support, interaction. That, to me, is a really good community, because it's a community that's structured around an actual service project.
I know that you're a moderator and admin for the Urantia Facebook group.
Right.
And I know that group is constantly growing. I don't know what you guys are on, like 7,000 now, or maybe more?
Yeah, 7,000 plus 100 or 2. Yeah.
Okay. And you know, the conversation, it varies. What has been your experience, and where do you foresee this going? Are you satisfied with what's going on with your Facebook group, or?
Well, it's kind of a it's kind of a way just to be engaged with the community. You know, you're there, you check it a couple times a day, and you just see what the conversations are, see what the level of thinking and discourse is. And I find that valuable in terms of producing the film, because I'm producing a film for Urantia book readers out there, and I want to be sure that my vocabulary and my conceptual constructions and so on are something that people are going to be able to relate to and enjoy and work with and engage with. So it's a kind of a nice way to just kind of keep in touch with what's going on out there. And it's a nice place to say hello to new readers. I mean, every month it seems like there's another 75 or 100 new readers coming on into that group. But we try to keep it focused on the Urantia book, and because it's a place where new readers come.
Right.
And from there, you know, people, Halverson's posting stuff for his meetings. The Pato and Antoinette sometimes will post something about their study group. So there's a kind of a flow of information there for people coming in who want to get engaged elsewhere in the community.
Well, David, it's just been nothing but a blessing to be here talking with you.
It's been great, really enjoyable.
Yeah, thank you so much. You know, please come back whenever you like. You know, we love love having you here.
Any questions, comments?
Well, you've always been such an
complaints?
impeccable researcher, and the work that you've put in. I was wondering, and maybe it was said, but I couldn't remember, when this next movie that you've got, when is it planned? When do you plan to release it?
That's such a tough question to answer. Originally, I had planned to release it Easter 2019. Right now, I'm looking at sometime late in 2021.
Is it like
It's,
any construction project? It takes twice as long and costs twice as much as you think?
Well, yeah, in a way. The problem here has been that with a research project, you start out with an idea of what you're going to do, and you start researching it, and suddenly you realize how little you know about the topic, and you have to do a lot more studying, a lot more research. And I want this to be good. I want it to really be right, so that when people see it, I'm not just blowing smoke. So it has been a lot of extra research, but it's coming along. I work on it every day. It's a 24/7 thing here.
I believe it. In fact, that reminds me of something you said during the interview that you had with Derek, and that was just how much the Urantia book gives us, like different rabbit holes you can go down and continue to do research. And I'm sure that's what happens to you when you're researching these things. It's like, oh wait, I also have to check out this, right?
Yes. Yeah. It's a path that's full of surprises, but when you're writing, if you're even doing a documentary or if you're writing a novel, they always tell you, allow your characters, allow your material to lead you and guide you into new things. And so it's kind of a zen to that, to letting it happen. I had this huge surprise with Paul. I realized that Paul's such a huge character in the Christian story, and I only had prejudices and a superficial understanding. So I just finished a 2-month period of just really digging into the academic work on Paul, and what a surprise. What a surprise.
Do you see another book just on Paul at some point, or some new movie?
No, not for me. But the thing that was a surprise was that if you take the New Testament, all the books in the New Testament, and if you arrange them in their chronological order, you get a whole different picture than the order that they're in the New Testament. Arrange Paul's letters in their chronological order, and now you get a beautiful story of how the early church developed and how Paul's atonement ideas developed over a 10-year period.
Really?
Romans was written 10 years after First Thessalonians, but the way the order in the Bible now was done by Pope Damasus in the 4th century, and he wanted Romans to just come right after the Gospels, because that's where Paul is full blown. But
Yeah.
then you miss the evolutionary story. So
Wow.
little things like that I want to be able to include in the film, give people a richer background.
I think a lot of people have that feeling about Paul. So Paul is looking forward to the release of this film so he can get off the hook with so many of us.
Well, he's not totally off the hook, but there was religious enthusiasm is a powerful thing, and Paul had it. I mean, he was on fire. And I mentioned, I think in this video you just saw, that a lot of his stuff on bad-mouthing women were written by a follower much later.
Yeah.
And scholars show a sequence of how Paul's followers tried to tone him down.
Oh,
They
really?
did it with women, they did it with his talking about slavery, how to handle slaves. So there's a whole political thing there going on in the background to tone him down and bring him more in line with more typical thinking.
Wow, that's interesting. I have more questions, but I'm going to open it up. I see Phil's got a question for us, and then Diane.
Hi again, David.
Yes, Phil.
We were told originally to have thousands of study groups. And I don't know how many thousands we have, if we have 1,000 or not. But in contrast to study groups, and I've been hosting one for 25 years and going to one for another 25 years, church personal interactions are so much more elaborate and more varied. I go to a church as well, and it's a United Church of Christ. And, there are 100 people or more every week. There's all sorts of activities and service projects and ways for the church members to interact and also serve the larger community. And I'm wondering, should we bring the Urantia book to the churches, or should we bring the church into the Urantia book community? The problem with the latter is we don't have a critical mass in any one place particularly. If we have to travel to get to the church for any length of time, it's not going to work. So I'm wondering, how do we integrate ourselves with that fourth epical revelation that's had this evolution for so many centuries? And so now we are here trying to bring the knowledge of the fifth epical revelation. And I'm not sure we're getting much of the fourth epical revelation evolution. We're not seeming to match up there very well. When we had people in the 60s, there were a lot more folks coming to our meetings, and that seems to have fallen off. Now, sometimes people say, well, that's happening to all the churches, not to the one I'm going to. So, David, what do you think we should be doing beside what you're doing to get integrated here with the fourth epical revelation? We can't just simply be isolated.
Yes, I agree, and it's a problem. It's a challenge that we need to confront. What I'm doing now is I'm just full steam ahead on trying to get it get the Urantia book into existing institutions. I'm not that interested in having a little community of ourselves. I realize that one of the best ways to get people in your church interested in the Urantia book is to show up on church cleanup day with a t-shirt that says, "Ask me about the Urantia book," and work your butt off. And you know, they'll ask you about the Urantia book because you're there working. That's a little flip, and I realize the seriousness of your question there, Phil. I suspect it's a question that the midwayers ask and the angels ask. You know, what's going to happen here? With the world spiraling, I don't know if even spiraling is the right word. It's just crazy out there. And something's got to be done to get that revelation out there. Do we do that by building communities? You mentioned we were told thousands of study groups. I'm not sure who the we were told people were, you know, who was doing the telling, but study groups just don't seem to have happened. I know they're online. There are hundreds, perhaps even thousands of study groups online. I wish I had a better answer for your question, Phil. I can only answer it for myself. I'm doing what I think is the right thing for me to do, but I think every person has to figure that out for themselves. We don't have good leadership. We don't have anybody telling us, giving us a grand vision of how we can do this, but we still have to do something. You know, you may be doing a lot more in your church there than you realize just by being there and being who you are.
Hi, this is Diane.
Hi,
I have
Diane.
a follow-on question to that, which has been burning for me for some time. I'm seeking to see the patterns that are evolving in how people get together. You focused on how the will of God and our place in it is acted out in relationship. And when we are involved in personality and relationship exchanges, that's when the gold is happening. And so there must be some ways to create those situations in a formal, informal, multiple, not even know it's happening kind of ways. And it leads down to the societies were formed pretty much for that purpose so many decades ago, early on when I got the book, also about the same time you did. And they were thriving. They served the purpose well. They were exciting. But that was coinciding with the time you said that was a resurgence of spirituality like none other. So the fact that it passed coincides with the attendance at societies and other kinds of gatherings like there were so many of before. So I had a call to Dick Prince, who turned me on to a couple of books, and I'm currently found them on Audible, and one of them is called Bowling Alone, and it traces the patterns through the ages of how these changes, how people get together and relate to each other, definitely changes. And who participates, who doesn't, and on what level. It's fascinating. So I'm hot on the trail here, but I don't have an answer yet. Here we are in Los Angeles with a very large population, a large area as well for traveling. So we should have a very happening society with more and more people coming. But we're finding, as we did a study of the societies around the country with a questionnaire, and we got some very revealing answers. They're all having the same situation. So where's the action moved to? Where's the happening place? If it's online, then we need to see how we could be most effective online. Obviously, having you come to us by streaming, and people even sitting in their living rooms can take part in this, that's a huge advance. I'm so grateful that you're doing this for us. And this will be the first of many, I hope. So your thoughts on this meandering pattern of how people actually get in relationship to have these spiritual happenings happen. Anything that you in your research can pursue on that would be very much appreciated, and then vehicles to share that among all the societies across the country and the world. I believe that there is another question, so I will hand the mic over.
Could I respond to you there, Diane? Go ahead.
We want you to respond. Yeah, please respond. We would be grateful.
Well, again, I can only speak for myself, but I have a very rich assortment of communities online, Urantia book readers, people doing different things. It's very rich. It's alive. There are hundreds of Urantia book readers online every day communicating with each other. And you get into some of these other groups, there are people recovering from drug addiction, people who've lost members of their families. So there are opportunities for service in those groups too. I'm sold on the online community. It's a huge time of transition, but I'd like to supplement that thought with get involved in your own community. You know, there are volunteer things you can do in a community. Any reader can do that. That puts you in touch with people. I've got some that I do that are really meaningful. You're not interesting people in reading the Urantia book, but you're engaged with people in service projects and you talk to them about their lives and you're connected, and that's really important. So I think those two things, in my view, are valuable, the online communities and just being engaged in your own physical community with your neighbors, with events going on in your community.
Well, thank you. And it may be that the role of societies has now moved from being a place where people regularly get together to rather a landing pad when a new reader does discover the book and is looking around for others. Here's the society, which does provide a centralized place to come to and ask questions and meet others in person, although they also can meet them online, apparently.
Well, the new readers are online. That's where they go. Somebody finds out about the Urantia book and they're on Google, they're on the internet trying to find out more about it, and they come to the groups that are online. Our Urantia group is getting close to 8,000 people. We have probably in the neighborhood of 100 new readers every month coming into that group. So, you know, I don't think new readers are going to look for societies. Societies are a social structure of an age that's rapidly fading into the past for a number of reasons. They go online. You go online, find what you want. You don't have to drive anywhere, be out in traffic. You're safe. It's a very turbulent time in terms of the way people gather.
Well, thank you, David. That kind of confirms what I've been observing. I'll pass the mic now. Jim English would like to say something.
Hey, David.
Hello.
It's good to see you, brother.
Good to see you too.
You know, David and I have a pretty one-dimensional relationship. We know each other just basically by a flat screen. Right? With our facsimiles beamed up and down from the satellites. And we spend the majority of our time looking at each other on a flat screen. But it was good to see you, friend, and say hi to Mary Jo for me.
I will. Good to see you too, Jim.
Okay, another question or comment and a question. As I said, I also am attending regularly at church. I sing in the choir. I go to the lectionaries. And every once in a while, I talk about the book to someone. At the lectionary last week, this Sunday it's going to be about Christ the King. And our pastor Iona, said, "Oh, I have a hard time with this one, talking about Jesus as king." And and they were talking about the cosmic Christ. And I said, "Well, I like that. You know, cosmic Christ is above human, but not equal to the eternal Son." So in little ways, I sort of interject Urantia truth into the conversation without being too obvious about it. But I'm recalling that Jesus said for a long time, there's going to be, most people are going to be following the religions of authority, not the religions of personal experience. So I'm a little, I would say, not very encouraged with the numbers of people that I'm going to reach in my church this way. We need some younger people, and I think what you're saying is you've got to be online to attract them, and not expect to have a group of people showing up someplace. The older people show up at the church, and we have some younger people too, but they're not, not looking for a new revelation, it would seem. They're happy with what they have. I've had people say, "Well, it's interesting, but it's not my cup of tea." My former pastor said, "Well, it could be a revelation, a divine revelation." I asked him that one time, "But it's not my book." So maybe I'm not being discouraged, but I'm not feeling as though I should expect much. Jesus said, "Don't be afraid, don't expect the world to like you." It didn't like me in the first place, so don't expect them to like you either. So I think we just have to keep plugging along, but I would like to get, a better feel for how to attract the youth. It could be online. Maybe we need to be doing some more music. I don't know. They have a lot of people going to those kind of churches.
Mm-hmm.
So, any comment on that?
Well, the music's interesting. Music certainly has played a key role in the beginning of every significant religious movement. The music is an important thing. Phil, I'm as baffled as you are. I really am. And all we can do is just plug away, and the more readers that are out there trying different things, sooner or later something will take off. Sooner or later somebody will hit the right thing and it will go. I really don't know what else to say. A part of me just wants to think that people like you are just kind of in position. You're in place there. If the need arises, you're there ready to go. Phil Calabrese is ready to go talk to his pastor on the day NASA announces they've got irrefutable evidence of intelligent life on another planet. So hang in there, Phil.
All right, I will.
I think we're making an assumption that because things have changed, and like you mentioned, David, the old model of societies and study groups, maybe that's waning, but I think it's certainly morphing into something different, which is all of these online groups. I attend 2 online study groups a week that are more in depth than any study group that I ever attended in person. I miss being there with people in person, but even still, online study groups are amazing. Yeah. And like you said, there's thousands of people that are learning about the book. They type in, what is the will of God, or whatever they might type in, and you're going to come up with the Urantia book. It's out there. It's way out there. And there's lots of people finding the book. We should not be the least bit dismayed. We're fulfilling our process, the point in evolutionary history where we arrived on the scene and learned about the book and did what we could with that information. And the torch is being passed. We don't have to pass it. It's the Supreme's in charge here, not us. I mean, and the revelators surely knew about the way the internet was going to come together, and maybe everything's just fantastic. And this isn't an epical revelation. I mean, it's not a dispensational revelation. It's not meant for everybody. So it's not like that. And they say, somebody said, oh, it's going to be disseminated for the next 1,000 years. And I believe that's probably true. And we're just here at the beginning. Did anybody else have questions here? Okay, well, I've got one more then. You mentioned archetypes and how some of these New Age churches that do the music and more of a get together in meetings kind of thing, they lost the archetypal stuff from the church. And I was wondering if you could elaborate on that a little bit. I don't quite understand what you're saying.
I'm thinking about the roots of culture, the stories that support culture. Stories carry values from one generation to another, and the stories are being lost. The Christianity, I hate to use the term Christianity because it covers such a broad spectrum of things. And in terms of the film work I'm doing and my vision here, I'm looking at the people who are bailing out, the progressives, the emergents, the ones who are bailing out, the ones who are discovering the Urantia book. How can we help them make a transition into exploring the book? But there's something important about the roots of culture, at least in my mind. And those roots are being lost. Oswald Spengler, historian in the early 20th century, made a comment about the depleted metaphysical soil of the West. The stories are gone, the metaphysics is gone. It's all become very superficial, very consumer oriented, and as deep as you can get. It's probably not much deeper than some self-help stuff that you find on TV. So I'm looking at the loss of those roots, and I just suspect that this is a swinging pendulum here with religious interest, and people are leaving the church, but they're still come back because they're looking for roots. And those ideas are reinforced in my mind by the way the Urantia book reinforces all of those deep cultural archetypes of Christian culture. It gives them new power. Look what Adam and Eve look like to us now versus what they did before we read the Urantia book. So that's about all I have to say on that. Culture is important.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. There's so much you've got going on. We really enjoyed your talk today, and it has given us so much to think about. And is there any other questions here? No. Let's hear another round of applause for David. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you so much. We're really looking forward to the movie coming out, and appreciate everything you've done.
Well, each one of you should keep doing all you're doing too. Let me leave you with a quote from Alan Watts, which I really like. He says, "We're really all just walking each other home." And I like to think about that.
Yeah.
People in our communities, the people who check out your groceries, those are people we're walking home with. Be good to them, love them, and uplift them. That's where we work with Supreme.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, David.
God bless.
Thanks, David. We look forward to having you back again.
Thank you.